Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. My unique item series is done, so we've moved on to finishing off my skills and abilities. And because of all of the hype surrounding the Cold Sorceress, I felt like the Cold Sorceress would be a good place to re-pick up this series. The past two videos I've done are Ice Bolt and Ice Blast, and now we're going to be going over one of my favorites, which is Glacial Spike. Each one of these abilities has its own particular strength. Ice Bolt is very strong in the fact that it has absolutely no mana cost, especially when you consider the fact that the other two abilities have mana costs as high as 21 or even 25 per cast, which can be a pretty big detriment early on in the game when you relatively have no mana. Ice Blast is extremely good single target damage, and it has an exceedingly long freeze duration. But what does Glacial Spike have over the other two? Well, Glacial Spike has the most amazing AoE radius. That's what Glacial Spike has over the other abilities. And that AoE radius allows you to freeze targets within a specified zone. Let me find a good zone. Oh, you know what's a good zone to go to? Arcane Sanctuary. I was just thinking about that. So basically with Glacial Spike, the reason why you would choose to use Glacial Spike over Ice Blast or Ice Bolt is because you are attacking a group of monsters. So whenever you are utilizing Glacial Spike, which has a 2.6 yard radius, you should only be utilizing it if you are attacking more than one monster. If it's just one monster, you need to use Ice Blast. Ice Blast is the superior choice as far as damage is concerned in single target. However, Glacial Spike is by far the superior choice in damage for multi-target fighting. And let me see if I can get a whole bunch of targets together here. So here we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze one, gather them together, and then once they're all together, I'm going to use Glacial Spike, and it's going to kill all of them in a nice, neat little row. And you'll notice that the other thing that it does is it freezes the target. The freezing effect is obviously a very amazing form of crowd control and can be very, very useful to, just keep you alive. As you can see, Mr. Batty over here can only hit me when he's unfrozen. So as long as I keep him frozen, he's not going to do anything. Now do keep in mind that, of course, Glacial Spike is going to shatter the corpses, so if you would like those corpses, or maybe you have a item find barbarian with you or something of that nature, you're not going to be able to use any of those corpses because they're all going to be shattered. Now, Glacial Spike works very good in combination with other abilities. So, for instance, if you were to utilize, say, something like, let me go put some points into, I don't have any skill points left. If you were to utilize Blizzard in combination, you could fire off multiple effects. Of course, those guys are cold immune, which with the new Sunder Charms that are coming out, won't necessarily be a problem anymore. But it is a problem right now. See if I can find some beat'ems. No, you guys are, there you go. Got some nice little beat'ems. So you fire your Blizzard, you get your Glacial Spike running, so you can have basically everything running at one time. You're going to cast the Glacial Spike in between your Blizzards to get the maximum damage off. Obviously, if you're a Blizzard Sorceress, your Blizzard damage is going to be the main damage that you're dishing out. But if you are a Blizzard Sorceress, you still have a delay. And during that delay, you can be firing other abilities. And Glacial Spike is definitely one of them that is very useful. Now, if you are fighting a boss, as I said earlier, or a single target, Glacial Spike ceases to become the best choice. In those situations, specifically, you are better off firing Ice Blast because it's single target damage. If you take a look at Glacial Spike, you'll see, and let me move myself out of the way so you can see. If you take a look at Glacial Spike, you will see that it has 1,173 to 1,242 damage, with an AoE radius of 2.6 yards and a freeze length of 8.9 seconds. However, Ice Blast has 2,385 damage to 2,465 damage with a freeze duration of 27 seconds. So, in every single situation that matters, the three of these interchange places. If you are in a desperate situation where you need mana over everything else, Ice Bolt becomes the superior choice because of its extremely low mana cost. It does have an exceedingly long cold length duration as well of 48 seconds, which is kind of insane, but it doesn't have the the pack a punch, the punching pack and punch of Ice Blast, and it doesn't have the AoE radius killing power of Glacial Spike. So you definitely would not use Ice Bolt as your main ability. And again, Ice Blast doesn't have the group killing potential that Glacial Spike has. So you definitely wouldn't use Ice Blast in large groups. You would use Glacial Spike in large groups. And basically what you're doing here is you would flip and flop back and forth between them at the appropriate times that you need them. Just to go over it one more time, because I know I've already said it a million times, but why not? Glacial Spike is your AoE ability for multi-target. Ice Blast is your high damage single target, and Ice Bolt is your low damage single target that has absolutely like bare minimum mana cost. You're never going to run out of mana firing Ice Bolt, but you're going to run out of mana firing Ice Blast and Glacial Spike. So if you're ever in a situation where you're running out of mana, that's the only reason to use Ice Bolt over the other two. Interlacing the ability with other effects is also very, very potent. You will often find that if you are a adept user of Glacial Spike, you can get some exceedingly good benefit out of it. Casting your Blizzard on a group of monsters and then basically rushing in or teleporting in even and firing your Glacial Spike at them will dish just tons of damage. And obviously, a lot of attention is on the Sorceress now, the Ice Sorceress. And the reason why is because, well, now you can finally break those pesky cold immunes that have been plaguing the Ice Sorceress, well, since cold immunes were introduced in the game. And it is certainly going to be very interesting. Now, Glacial Spike does have some abilities or some items that actually have Glacial Spike on them. What I usually like to do is I usually like to go to Amazon Basin because it lists every single one of the items that have Glacial Spike on it as a chance to cast or any other kind of ability. And chance to cast abilities do go off of your synergies. So if you were a sorceress, like a melee sorceress or something, and you wanted to have Glacial Spike, firing off as you attack, you could. Because there are two items in the game that have Glacial Spike. One is a pair of gloves. It's armor. Mavina's Embrace Kraken Shell, which has a level 3 at 10% chance, which isn't too amazing, but even level 3 Glacial Spike has that nice, amazing freezing effect, and can definitely come in handy as far as crowd control is concerned. And then the other one is the On Attack Death Rune Word, which has level 18 at a 25% chance. And quite honestly, level 18 at a 25% chance is a pretty large amount of damage, especially if you were to synergize it on a sorceress. Let's simulate that real quick, shall we? So I'm going to go ahead and reset my character, and we are going to simulate a fully synergized level 18 Glacial Spike. All right, so the first thing we got to do is get our Glacial Spike to level 18. So that is the damage of a unsynergized Glacial Spike, which is it's close to unsynergized because we did have to put 1 point into each one of these. And then to fully synergize it, we of course need Ice Bolt maxed out. We need Ice Blast maxed out. And we don't have to max out Blizzard because Blizzard is the freeze length. So we don't necessarily need that unless we want the freeze length to increase. But to get the most out of this, we're going to have to put 20 points into Frozen Orb. So a fully synergized Glacial Spike on a melee sorceress using a death weapon would be 1,436 to 1,524 with a freeze length duration of 5.5 seconds. And then, of course, you could also tack in Cold Mastery, which, if you can bring the monster down to negative 100%, is, of course, going to double that damage pretty massively to, 3,000 some odd damage, which is actually pretty darn sweet. So 3,000 per Glacial Spike with a cast rate of 25%, and it's on attack, not on hit. This means that you don't have to actually hit the target for the effect to happen. You only have to swing. Literally just swing in the air like this. Like, that's it. So if for a character that may not necessarily be able to hit a target due to attack rating issues or whatever's going on, having it be on attack is definitely very sexy. it's I have actually thought about this a lot as far as characters go. That the sorceress has a lot of melee possibilities with chance to cast items that could be very interesting. The enlightenment armor has fireball on it. There is the obedience polearm, which has the firewall. Um, there's so many different items in the game, like death that has glacial spike, and there's even items that have frozen orb and all sorts of stuff like that. And in combination with the masteries that the sorceress has, you could very easily build a character that could be spamming spells that do a pretty massive amount of damage while you're attacking with just a melee hit, almost like a multi-spectral kind of a character. As far as Glacial Spike goes, I don't really feel like there's a whole lot more to go over with this ability. It's pretty straightforward. Glacial Spike is just a really fun ability to have on a Cold Sorceress. It's a very potent part of the Cold Sorceress arsenal, and you definitely should utilize it. Whether you are a Blizzard Sorceress, whether you are a Frozen Orb Sorceress, or even if you're something like a Frost Nova Sorceress, like it doesn't even really matter. The freezing effect on Glacial Spike in the AoE form is extremely potent for crowd control abilities, even if it doesn't necessarily do any damage. Even if you haven't really put a whole lot of points into it, Glacial Spike can still be extremely effective when dealing with groups to slow them down and keep them from being able to murder you. Crowd control in general is a very big part of a character that, for instance, like the sorceress, doesn't necessarily have the greatest defenses in the world, and being able to crowd control the monsters so that you can actually kill them is certainly extremely useful. I forgot to put points in HP again. And as you can see, I can literally just halt the advance of the Urdars while I am firing off my frozen orbs. And this allows me, obviously, to not get hit by them and to be able to cast myself a little bit easier because, quite honestly, they're chasing me around. I've got a kite. I've got to, move my character. But if I freeze them, I don't have to kite anywhere near as much. Now, it is a rather hefty mana cost for this ability. It has a mana cost of 24, and it goes up pretty high. You're going to have a healthy mana pool, which, as you can see, I do not. But, it's a healthy balance with the Sorceress. You have to be able to build your character properly. 1 point warmth is always important. I don't think there's any Sorceress out there in this game that should be without at least 1 point in warmth. And there's other things too, like 1 point in static field and like 1 point in teleport and things like that. They just make sense. So as you balance your character out, you're not going to be able to just dump 20, 40, 60, 80, like 100 points directly into the cold tree, because you're going to want things like an armor to go with. You're going to want your static field. You're going to have to go down the tree and grab teleport, which is 2 points right there. And before you know it, you're going to be spending a whole lot of points all over the tree to get fairly good effect out of your character, and you're not going to have 100 points to just spam into your cold tree. Now, thankfully, with the Sunder Charms coming, you actually could focus almost entirely on cold and still do well in the game, but you're going to have to get that Sunder Charm first. A lot of people have really kind of missed the mark when it comes to these Sunder Charms. They're level 75. We don't know how rare they are. You're still going to have to level up your character to level 75 to use it, which means that if you build a character that's entirely cold damage, your character is going to be absolutely useless versus any cold immune monsters all the way up to level 75, which is a really long way to be useless. And unless you're getting carried by your teammates, you're going to have a really poor time. I think that's pretty much everything for Glacial Spike. I don't really think there's much more to cover with it. I do... trying to remember just to be sure. I think they're faster. I'm not 100% sure on this. Let's go check it together, shall we? I think Glacial Spikes are faster. I remember testing this out one time, and I think I remember them being different speeds, and I think Glacial Spike was the fastest. So let's check Ice Bolt first. That is pretty slow. Let's see if we can get some count on that. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. So about 3 seconds to reach the end of the screen. Ice Blast. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Well, tiny bit faster it seemed like, but not really that much. And Glacial Spike, 1,000, 2 1,000. So Glacial Spike definitely does have a faster missile speed than Ice Blast and Ice Bolt. It looks like by quite a large margin. Let me see if I can find some information on that real quick. Glacial Spikes are 33% or 1/3 faster than Ice Bolts and Ice Blasts, but are the same size. Although Ice Blasts apply more damage to a single target, Glacial Spike can damage and freeze multiple targets within their radius of effect, which can result in greater damage per second against multiple targets. Pretty much what I said earlier. So they are 33% faster than the other bolts, which does make an interesting consideration, is that when you're trying to hit something that's moving or running away from you or whatever, the faster one may be the better choice over the higher damage one if you're having trouble hitting the target. Perhaps even in PvP, for instance, where players are obviously not going to stand still and let you wail on them. Maybe the faster of the three might be the better choice, even though the Ice Blast is most likely the superior damage. If the ability is very slow, it could be very easy to dodge. As always, thanks for watching, and get out there and freeze some things with your Glacial Spikes.